Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a very interesting show set up for you today. All right, is the SEC done firing their coaches? And we also need to talk about the LaNorris situation. There's a lot of talk that he may be hitting the road and not necessarily to the NFL. But let's talk about the SEC first, and then we'll get into this whole LaNorris thing and South Carolina. And it's just, things have sort of fallen apart in Carolina land. And the SEC has had, you're talking about a turbulent year. 25% of our coaches have been fired.
Nobody wants you around, period. Oh, look at him, fellas. You crying, boy? You crying, boy? Maybe we'll go back down to McDonald's and get you a Lamburger and some French fries.
Sam Pittman, Billy Napier, Brian Kelly, and Hugh Freeze, gone, out of here. And let's take a look at where everybody stands. Texas A&M is finally getting off the 8-4. And I think Mike Elko is making a huge difference. Alabama has, after a terrible start against Florida State, they've really been turning it on. Georgia, the cardiac kid's been coming back. Here's Ole Miss sitting at 9-1. And Florida has got to calm down. I've already told you they've got a restraining order against Florida down at Ole Miss. They're not allowed to get within 500 yards of lane. And they've really turned into kind of a mean girl. You know, they're just absolutely disrespecting Ole Miss to a point I almost can't believe. And they just think they're going to take whatever they want. Well, it's 2025, folks. Gators, you don't get to just go in and grab whoever you want out of Mississippi.
Honey, look around you. To everyone here who matters, you're vapor. You're spam. A waste of perfectly good yearbook space.
You did it once with Dan Mullen. I don't know that you're going to do it this time because NIL is involved. And now it really doesn't matter where you're at. Look at Kirk Cignetti over there at Indiana. You know, he looks great. So you can win pretty much anywhere if you've got this. Texas has been a real disappointment, but they're hanging in here by their fingernails. That Mississippi State game. Whew. Here's Diego. This is Diego. I think I'm going to call this Diego built instead of Vanderbilt because Diego built the heck out of this team. They're 8-2. It's hard to root against Vanderbilt. Oklahoma, I'm mad at Oklahoma for beating us last week. Dang it. Here we are at 3-3 in the SEC, 6-3. That's very disappointing. Joey has been such a blessing given what happened with NICO and all that. NICO's gone out to UCLA and been running for his life, basically. Surrounded by a bunch of 2 and 3 stars. How you feeling about that decision now, NICO?
You blew it!
Anyway, Joey's killing it as far as yardage, touchdowns, all that, but our defense has really let us down. If we had the same defense as last year, we'd have maybe one loss. And if a frog had wings and all that, you know how that story goes. Anyway, Missouri, they lost a big one. They're sitting here at 6-3 as well. A disappointing season for them, but not terrible. LSU fired their coach when they were 5-3. Now they're 5-4. Here's Florida, who quit. Literally quit against Kentucky. And pretty much Mark Stoops has saved his job. He was on the chopping block. I thought they were going to finish 3-9. It really looked that way. But last week, they had Auburn versus Kentucky, which was really the Hunger Games. If you think about it, you had Hugh Freeze and Mark Stoops, and one of them was going to get fired. Well, Mark's team won. Hugh got fired. So he survived that. Then they played Florida, who is coachless right now, and just beat them into the ground. And look, Kentucky owns Florida right now. They own Florida after 31 years in a row of getting beat by Florida.
Baby, cry for me. Come on, cry.
And I had gone out of my skull.
They've won 4 of the last 5, so great for them. And that's a real positive for Kentucky because they didn't want to have to come up with $37 million and get rid of him. But if he finishes 3-9 or would have after a 4-8, you almost got to let him go. All right, here's Mississippi State. This is the best 5-5 team there is out there. They've had so many opportunities to win, the Texas game especially. They just haven't been able to pull it off, even with the Cowbells. But they're doing, look, they only won like 2 games last year, so they're doing fine. Here's Auburn. The biggest disappointment in the SEC is Auburn. I don't think there's any question. Hugh Freeze is gone. And, oh, by the way, Diego Pavia wanted to go to Auburn. Yeah, when he was at New Mexico State, He wanted to transfer to Auburn, but Hugh told him he wasn't good enough. He didn't fit his system.
You big dummy!
I guess he was looking for somebody who was really good at losing. Well, he found a couple of them. Anyway, Auburn's a dumpster fire right now. South Carolina, this is a team, maybe they're the biggest disappointment. Honestly, 3-6, 1-6 in the SEC. This is the team that everybody kind of picked as, look, LaNorris Sellers, a possible Heisman. South Carolina, a possible playoff. I mean, this has just been awful. And Shane Beamer, the hot dog man, their excuses aren't going to cut it. And it's Beamer's on the hot seat big time. I don't think they'll fire him because they got to come up with over $30 million to let him go. And, he had a good year last year, winning 9 games. So I think he's got one more good year left in him. He'll have to win next year, and that's going to be very difficult to do because, as you know, the SEC is going to 9 games. And when I show you what South Carolina's been through, you're going to think, why would you add an SEC game? Well, see, when you're Greg Sankey and you're really stupid and you get played by Tony Petitti from the Big Ten, you do dumb things. You do really, really dumb things, and you get nothing for it.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
But that's a story for another day. And don't worry, Sankey, I'm coming. Yeah, I'm not done with you, buddy. And you're going to hear about it next year from every coach. Anyway, and then Arkansas, they fired their coach, 0-5. I don't know what they're going to do there. I guess Bobby Petrino, his offense looks good, but I don't know if they're going to keep him as head coach or not. This was his opportunity to show that, hey, I'm ready to take over, and it just hadn't worked out. We'll see. Maybe he pulls a miracle here at the end and wins a couple of games. And if, could win 2 out of the last 3, maybe they would consider it. But otherwise, they're probably shopping. So at this point, I think they're done firing coaches. The only 2 they could fire now would be Mark Stoops or Shane Beamer. I just don't see it happening. Stoops is coming off of 2 victories in a row in the SEC. And Beamer's too expensive, coming off a good year last year. So probably done, but a 4th of the coaches are gone. And next year when we go to 9 games, you've already fired the weakest ones just about, with the exception of those 2 I listed. So I don't think we'll see a ton of firings even if people struggle with this new schedule. Now there's a lot of talk about LaNorris Sellers staying in college and transferring to Miami. And this is really interesting because if you think where LaNorris was last year, he was playing well. They had a good defense, South Carolina that is, and they had a pretty decent offensive line. Their offensive line this year has been in shambles, and LaNorris has been running for his life. And let me show you where he was just a few months ago. Yeah, right here. There was a lot of stories out there. It says LaNorris Sellers leapfrogs Arch Manning as the #1 overall pick in 2026. This was in May, folks. That's how much buzz was going on about LaNorris. And I thought he might win the Heisman. I had him as a dark horse. And he's a good guy. He's a 4.0 student, great athlete. I've never seen a guy run quite like him. But he has to have some time to throw the ball, and he has none behind that line. And he's playing against really good teams. So a lot of the scouts are saying, look, you need to stay in college another year and show us what you can do behind a good – look, Miami's got an offensive line. They've got at least 2 5-star tackles down there. They're loaded on their offensive line, and that's one of the reasons Carson Beck went there. Plus, they got a whole lot of that, and they're very interested in LaNorris. And Todd McShay said there's a strong opinion in NFL scouting circles he will be back in school next year, and that he absolutely needs to show his development and to be ready when he's called upon in the first round. He said everyone is supporting the concept of he needs another year. There are people in his camp that are in agreement, from what I'm told. If I was in his camp, I'd say the same thing. I was expecting him to go first round, no problem. But his year has stunk. And I have a hard time blaming him. The offense is very generic there. They don't do a whole lot that is exciting, and they don't protect. And look, I don't care who you've got back there. Tom Brady can't throw from his back. So you've got to give your quarterback a few seconds. McShay said, I'm not here to say there's collusion.
Yes, you are.
He said, I promise you, no one said a word, but one person started putting the dots together. There's a place in South Florida where they've done a really nice job of handpicking quarterbacks. Heck yeah, they have. Cam Ward and Carson Beck. They loved it, and they were willing to pay the money. Now, folks, when you look at LaNorris stats, they are anemic. 1,500 yards in 9 games, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a QB rating of 58, which is 70th. And look at the stats in his games. I mean, 200 yards in the first game, but look at all the rest of them. With the exception of Mizzou, where he threw for 300, look at these other games. 128, 94, 153, 124, 124, 222, and 180. I mean, you're averaging about 170 yards. That is terrible. It's 2025, not 1975, where everybody was doing the wishbone. And then you look down here rushing. He's only rushed for 58 yards all year. Total 158 yards. And a big part of that's because he's getting sacked. He's getting sacked a lot. 33 sacks the dude's had. Look how many 6 sacks. 6, 5. That's impossible. You cannot sack LaNorris Sellers 6 times in a game, and they did it multiple times. He's too quick and too fast. Now, I think South Carolina would pay the guy to stay just like they did last year. The problem is, if you're LaNorris, can you really afford to stay at South Carolina where you're not going to get any protection? And we're going to 9 games, so, I mean, you want to be running around back there trying to find an open receiver. In the meantime, a linebacker's about to take your head off. Look, you go to Miami, you're going to get protection. You're going to play in an easier league against easier defenses. You're going to be able to bump those stats up, and you'll go in the first round, because when you go in there and show those coaches what you can do in the combine with his running ability, can you imagine how fast he is when they clock his 40? And then how about his strength? So he's going to be fine. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to get some protection. Either that or South Carolina needs to go out and get about 3 or 4 offensive linemen and a really good offensive line coach. I mean, if I was him and I was in his camp, I'd be like, look, unless you're going to put up some all-conference guys in front of me, I'm not coming back, because I got to think about my own situation. First of all, you're going to get me hurt. Secondly, you're killing my draft stock. And thirdly, I want to have some fun, and I'm not having any fun here. And the one defense I will give South Carolina, I want you to look at who they've played. First of all, Vanderbilt at this time was top 10. Then Mizzou, 23rd. LSU was 11th at the time, 14th, 4th, and 7th in the country, all during these times they played them. Think that through for a minute. 6 of the 7 teams they played were top 25 or top 10. South Carolina's had a very tough schedule. That is the one defense I will give them. But you're in the SEC. That's life. It's always going to be tough in the SEC. I mean, these last few games, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ole Miss, I mean, good grief. That's Lions and Tigers and Bears, oh my. That's one of the reasons I don't know that Beamer will last past next year, because it's not going to get any easier. It's only going to get tougher. And now he's going to be on the hot seat. And South Carolina, they're not going to be happy with 4 wins a year. They're just not. It's going to be tough sledding. And look, everybody in the SEC has got to kind of tamp down their expectations going into next year, because the schedule's just going to be that much tougher. And the only guy who's probably going to get fired would either be Shane Beamer or Mark Stoops. Because like I said, you're not going to fire somebody that's your first-year coach. So that bottom 25% that already has been fired, they're safe next year. And then who you got to fire after that? Kirby, Kalen DeBoer, Josh Heupel, Lane Kiffin? I don't think so. Eli Drinkwitz? I don't think. Eli's done a great job at Missouri. That guy deserves a medal. And you're certainly not going to get rid of Sark. Or Mike Elko? Absolutely not. So I think we're done with firings going into next year, with the exception of maybe Mark Stoops and maybe Shane Beamer. That would be about it. So I think the craziness is done for the time being. Anyway, I did want to cover these stories, talk about the SEC a little bit and kind of where we're headed. And LaNorris, I don't see you at South Carolina next year. And it's really, I like LaNorris. I was kind of rooting for him the last couple of years. I couldn't help it. He was wearing those Coke bottle glasses from the 1970s, 4.0. It's hard not to like that guy. And he comes from a really good family. I mean, unfortunately, he's just in a tough spot. And I don't think it's his fault. I really don't. But, if he does go to Miami, which he probably will, we'll find out for sure how good a quarterback he is. I think if he's given time, he'll continue to develop like he did last year. But I don't think it's time to go to the NFL. Either that or South Carolina's got to come up with some real money for offensive linemen. I mean, they have to. Otherwise, I mean, he's not doing it to be mean to South Carolina. It's just like, look, you know, I got to think about my future. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, boom, and boom. Hit that button right there. It won't cost you a dime. Help me get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video, YouTube. Thanks, you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
It's kind of the story of the night. Clock was wrong the whole game. We're trying to kick an onside kick to start the second half, and we got to wait on the chain crew because they're eating a hot dog. That's the only disappointing thing about tonight. So